Welcome back to the 13th grade. Let's go over the one percenter concept. What exactly is the ROI of college and should you be going? All right, guys, real quick concept. I want to talk to you about, we talked about a lot about the return on investment on things like, if I took money and I put it into real estate or I bought a business or if whatever, if I took money and I put it into something, what's my return on investment? And what I mean by return on investment, again, is if I go to work and I make $100 and I take that $100 and I put it into the stock market, after a year, what am I really getting out of that? Am I losing the $100? Was it a waste? Am I making $100 and then, or am I putting $100 in and then I'm making 10% return? So a year from now, I'll have $110, and a year from that, I'll have, even more money and so forth, like compounded interest. What really is the return on investment? One of the things that a lot of people don't think about, because we are marketed to day in and day out, and we just sort of float, we just do the natural thing, is going to college. And I think it is very important that we really step back and we start to think about really what is the return on investment in college? Like, does it make sense to go? If we do go, should we be going to a private institution? What school should we be going to? Like, what around it? And what does the wealthy do when it comes to, to college? Now, what I'll say to you is when we talk about wealthy, what we're talking about is the people that are the people that have a little bit of money, they're first generation rich. I would be an example of that. Didn't come from, very crazy means or anything like that, and kind of worked my way there. So, what would I tell my children? How would we be looking at college? Would we tell them absolutely, graduate high school, go to college, graduate college, get married, have kids, soon have children, right? And we covered this a little bit while ago, but the answer to that is of course not. I break that away from those that are maybe necessarily ultra wealthy, those that are maybe worth, I don't know, 20, 30, 50, $100 million. Those parents may have their children go to college, not necessarily for the return on investment in the way that you're thinking in. I spent $200,000 to get a doctor's degree, but I'm making now $300,000 a year, so a pretty good return on investment, right? But they may have send their children to school, or they may send their children to private schools, even in middle school, private schools, and so forth, because it offers a certain level of status. It keeps them within a certain circle, and that's their network. For example, a really wealthy parent can give a nice sizable donation to an Ivy League school, get their kid into it, and now their kid's going with other rich kids who they are just not necessarily learning a skill that they're going to earn money from because they have enough money that they're inheriting. They're kind of just walking into millions, right? But that they're developing the network, right? That is in itself is of a value. So when we talk about return on investment, I want to look at it in those particular ways. Like, one, if you are saying to me, yes, I want to go to college simply because I realize that it's not really a great return on investment financially wise. However, I want the experience. I plan to go to Ivy League school, or I plan to, like, the whole point is to go there and I want to network with other people, network with other, whatever field you want to be in. And the only way that I can get in those circles is not only be in college, but get into the clubs, get into the fraternities and so forth, and be a part of that. Oftentimes, in depending on what college you go to, university you go to, some of the value is simply the other people that you meet because those people have connections. And so you're literally going there again to meet connections. So that's one way of thinking about it. If you're not thinking about it that way, then you really should be sitting down, especially if you're a young person today in 2025, and be thinking to myself, what really is the return on investment in, like, how much money am I going to have to spend to put out, and what am I really going to get in return? I can't tell you how many people we have hired, or I have personally hired over the course of the year, that had a degree in something and it had nothing to do with what we were hiring for. and they didn't need it. We were just looking for experience. Unlike any other time, like unlike when my parents, grew up, unlike when I grew up, you don't necessarily really need a college degree in these days to get a good job. Like it's perfectly, I just think about the other day, like I just saw Elon Musk and he posted something and said, "We're looking for engineers. Um, just send us your work." Like they don't want a big long resume. They don't want you to go like, "Oh, I work for these big companies, whatever." Just send us your code, send us your work, and we'll determine if it's good or not. If you want to come work in my business, I could care less what school you went to or what degree that you have, right? Actually, there's not a lot of degrees that would help you to come into my business. I think as a whole, and if I'm going to link it to a couple of books that kind of describe this concept, but excuse me, we go through generations go through different hardships, different situations. Okay. And I'm not going to do this justice in explaining it, but the best way I can explain it to you is that, you know, when my grandparents were working, they were working in factories and they were working like it was hard. Like they, worked the depression and all of that. My parents, when they came up, yes, they got a little bit of an education and yes, they got good jobs, but they were definitely the era where they would have told me, if you want to be successful in life, you have to go to college. You have to go get a degree. And the reason is because when they grew up, very few people had degrees, right? And it was like if you wanted to go do business and you had a business degree, for your business degree, like that was the only way that you were going to get sort of into that, that work or that job or whatever. Like you want to go be at work for Chase Bank, like you need a business degree. You want to go do like you need a degree for it. And so in their generation, basically they kind of got into this concept of like you need to, do good in high school, you need to go to college, you need to get a 4-year degree, probably even get a master's degree. And if you don't do that, you're not gonna have a good job. Like that was it. There was no other outlet. What did I do? I went to college, got a degree. I worked in the field of my degree for about 2 years, and then I was doing something completely different. Those that have grown up in my age are probably, and I know they are still actually telling their children, hey, you should go get a degree. You should, get a degree, and that's how you're going to get a job. However, there is a generation of people that are in their, what I would say right now in 2025 are probably in their early 30s that have recently graduated, that have recently started working, and they're probably in their impression is probably like, man, I really didn't need to go to school. And because of the expense of college and universities have gone up so crazy, I think if you're in your early 30s right now, or even your late 30s, you're thinking to yourself, my parents told me that I need to go to school because that's what they needed to, which so they were telling me. But I'm looking at my kids and going, yeah, I don't necessarily think so because there are ways that you can make with a scale based on internet, based on access to information, based on you can learn a lot of different skills without having to go to a traditional university. And just the stigma of not having a degree has been broken down. Again, think Elon Musk tweet that I would say to my children, you really don't need to go to school. And not only do you not need to go to school, I don't think you should go to school unless you were going to go for one, to just get experience and just do the circle thing and just try to find people, whatever, or you need a very specialized degree for the thing you're going to do. So if you need to go be a doctor, you're going to have to go to school. If you want to go be you know, um, I don't know, an attorney, then yes, you're going to have to go to school because you need to have that years to get that sort of certificate and to pass, right? But if you're going to school because you want to, study philosophy or just business in general because you think, oh, I want to work for a business someday, like you don't need any of that, right? You just don't need any of that. And you certainly don't need a based on what we know and what we've learned so far in this class, you certainly don't need a fancy degree to get a job, especially like something in the trades, to then make a pretty good amount of money because all you need is a kind of a decent amount of money coming in. because you're going to deploy that into assets that are then going to is what's going to supercharge your wealth, right? So to be honest with you, going and being a physician and taking out, 300, half a million dollars in debt, and then having to go work and being a 9 to 5 as a physician, even though you're making a good amount of money to pay off all that debt may not necessarily be the best course. So anyway, so the point of the video is like, if you're thinking about going to school right now and you're in high school and you're just thinking, you're like, okay, I should go to college. I should do what should I do? I'm not quite sure. If you can't answer the question, I'm not sure what kind of degree that I want, don't go. Take some year off, go travel. Be a much more better experience for you. If you are in there going, well, I think I want a degree in this, or I think I need this degree for this so I can get this particular job. You want to pair it with the next couple lessons that we do here. But I really want you to sit down and think about like exactly dollar for dollar. Really figure out like go to the university, go to the college, and say how much is it going to cost me to get that degree? Let's say it's 200 grand. What's the interest rate that I'm going to have to pay? Because let's say you have to take out loans. What's that payment? And then I want you to really go look and figure out how much money are you actually going to make in that job that you're going to use that degree for. Saying that you need to actually have a degree for that job. Again, go check that out. You probably don't even need it, but if you do, and then I want you to ask yourself, like, does it make sense to, like, say, example, go spend $160,000 a year to get a degree so that you can become an elementary school teacher, and then you go to be an elementary school teacher and you make 60 grand a year, and then you can't even make the student loans, and now you're strapped to that, getting robbed all day long. You may have to say to yourself, I'm not going to go be a teacher. I got to go find something else. I need to find a job that doesn't require the 100,000, 120, 150, $200,000 education that's going to pay me 60 grand a year. I need to go find a job that maybe has a 2 year, to degree or certification or something like that that can offer me about the same. Even though your passion might be, you really want to be a teacher, is your passion really to be a teacher, or is your passion really, or should you be focused on, let me just find something I can grind at for 5 to 10 years while I'm building these assets and while I'm doing this well thing here. I really don't, I'm really not like, I'm not married to my, like, I would never go like, oh, I really want my kids, like, what do you want to be? Like, oh, I want to be a doctor for like 50 years. Like, that sounds boring as hell, right? I don't want to do anything for 50 years. And if I'm going to be building for generational wealth, right? I certainly don't want to be doing that for 50 years. I want to find something that gives me complete flexibility that I can do and just grind and allows me to scale and do above and beyond. That's not just 9 to 5, but I can work maybe 24/7 all the time. That can generate even more money because I'm gonna want to do that thing for about 10 years and then I'm done. I want to do that from 25 to 35 and then I'm done. When you start thinking about a career and something that you're going to do for 10 years, you start thinking about what can I do to maximize the earned income that I have coming in so that I can deploy as much of that into assets and investments so that I don't have to work anymore. Versus what do I want to do for the rest of my life before retirement? Like, again, we're flipping that up on its head. No longer are we looking and going, I'm going to get a job at 25 and work until 65, 40 years. No, we're thinking, what can I do and grind out for 10 and then maybe go part-time for the next 10 and then probably not really do anything after 40 unless we really wanted to see how far we can go. So think about it. If you're thinking about going to college, again, just really sit down and say, what's my degree? What's that going to cost me? What's the payment going to be for that? You can get all this information ahead of time. How much money am I really going to make? And if the money that you're going to make is going to be completely robbed by taxes and the payment that you have to do for student loans, and that's going to really set you back, I really think you have to think about it and go, do I need a different career? And then I would really encourage you, if you think you're going to go on this wealth building journey, you should be thinking about, again, something, along the lines of, what do I want to do for like 10 years or so, not necessarily what do I want to do for 40. And when you start thinking that way, I think you make different choices. Until next time.